Hello and welcome to Michael and Ivanka's Grand Podcast, a weekly pan-European podcast we sound English, but one of us is Croatian, kinda, and the other one of us is in Italy. My name's Michael Forrest.
And I'm Ivanka Majic.
And this week we're going to talk about potential and the achieving thereof, personal potential. This is another life coach episode of the Grand Podcast where we talk about achieving your goals and reaching your potential. What does potential mean to you in personal terms? Or just any terms?
In any terms, potential. Potential means, I think, trying your best. Try not to have regrets as well, maybe.
Regrets. And I mentioned it last week, I think, but just I came back from my month holiday and I sat down and I did a little spider chart of like, what do I care about? Like, where am I going to put my attention? And what is my biggest fear? Not achieving my potential. And the reason that I quit day jobs, the reasons that I get angry, the reasons that when I'm working for someone else, when I'm trying things, when I feel like I'm wasting time, it's because I feel like I have this potential and a responsibility to a certain level of like being able to do stuff that I am not meeting. So that the sense of wasting potential is one that really sort of plays on my psyche when things aren't going so well, or when I feel like I'm in the wrong place. So I wanted to sort of like unpack that. And then just in terms of like what is potential is, it's a battery. It's like, okay, we pull something apart like an elastic band. You pull it apart, that's creating a potential. Or you kind of fill a battery up with chemicals so that one end is 5 volts and the other end that's creating a potential. But then you've got to power something with that potential. And I think personally I have a habit of, I'm very interested in stretching the elastic band, but then like making the robot that the elastic band powers, just for an example, I sort of like, I'm sometimes less interested in that. Or I sort of show some work that I've done and I expect people to see the potential of the process and sort of maybe forget that they're just focused on what the actual work is. So it's a whole thing
that's an interesting point about tools and whether making good tools is in itself, if you're really good at making tools that other people can use to reach their potential, are you reaching your potential? My daughter asked yesterday evening of dinner, she's very good at questions, Mummy, what did you want to be when you grew up when you were little? And I was like, I don't know. So there ensued a conversation about the fact that, for example, neither me nor my husband could ever have imagined the life we have today because we didn't really know that was possible.
Right.
Which is quite another interesting aspect of it. It's like, if you don't know that vets exist, how can you want to be a vet? And if you don't know that you can have a house in the Adriatic, how do you know that that's your dream? So you kind of need to have ideas and thoughts in your head and be exposed to many options to even understand what your potential might be.
Yeah, and I suppose this comes back to like education and things like that as well. Like education is creating a potential in a human being, but then like sometimes, what are they going to do? They're going to waste that potential on joining the insurance company and
well, maybe. But
anyway, we've still got music playing under this.
Oh, have we? Okay. Anyway, sorry, we've started talking.
We started talking, but shall we? Let's just lampshade it and play the intro music, shall we? How's it going, Ivanka? How are you doing?
I'm extremely excited and extremely nervous because my mother is arriving today and I haven't seen her since before Christmas.
Wow.
And I'm very, very excited to see her. I'm also extremely paranoid that she's going to have come all this way to see us and she's going to get the COVID.
She's going to get the virus.
So I'm trying to set some boundaries for fear for myself. So that's this morning. The panic started building yesterday and it's reached some sort of peak this morning, but I hope I've put some some control over it. So we'll see.
That's interesting, because that's exactly where I am. I am with Sharon's parents in Milan, and so she's going to see her parents for the first time since February. But that's, I think, the longest time she's been away from them for her whole life, probably. Yeah. So I'm here sort of like riding along, hanging around, but she's just she's very happy about that. But there's definitely that kind of like, I've just been on a plane with a load of people, I don't know where they've been, and yes, we've had masks on, but I am very bad at not touching my mask the whole time. Like I don't know how these little tiny little tickly bits of fluff get in there and start tickling your nose, and then you've got to keep moving. Although I did quite enjoy wearing a disposable mask. It felt quite comfortable to start with. But yeah, like every little you're like, is there something in my throat? Oh no, I've got a cough. Oh no, I've got COVID. Oh no, I'm going to give it to everyone. And you're not sure about hugging, and you're not sure about anything, and everything's thrown off. But yes, it's nice to finally, it was nice. It was like the sort of executive airport experience yesterday.
Because there's nobody there.
Nobody flying.
Yeah. So yes, there's that element. I've discussed with my husband this morning the fact that I am not going to be thinking about the fires in California and Oregon because it's too much to think about. But on a positive gaining control of your existence front, we did a nice little beach clean-up, me and the little family, last Sunday. We enjoyed ourselves. We kayaked off to a wild beach. I really struggle to understand how people can go and lounge around on a wild beach that is covered in rubbish and not pick it up. It's and I don't know what I'm like. I can't sit here. I cannot eat. I can't sit here. But I suppose my family are accepting of my need to pick up all the rubbish. So luckily there were enough plastic bags within the rubbish. We had somewhere to put it, and then we loaded up the kayak. So there's that. But that's one of those like negative but positive things, because there's so much at the moment that feels so out of control and beyond any individual's control, that just like going to a beach and picking up some rubbish is psychologically incredibly satisfying.
Something you can have a bit of agency over in the face of everything just seems to be at breaking point. Yeah.
And so that, I think that'll do.
Emperor Trump will take over, destroy all climate accords. Well, he's already done that, hasn't he? And everyone will die of pandemics, and England will be bombed by the EU and America and China. And
I think that might be taking it a step too far. I think it'll just bomb itself the rate it's going. It's in a right old mess, isn't it?
Disaster.
It is a disaster. So yes, so be happy about the things you can be happy about at the moment, I'd say.
Just accept the
So yes, and how are you? So we know you've been on an aeroplane.
I've been on an aeroplane. I've survived that. I woke up this. It was not a great night's sleep, and I woke up this morning with minus 13% on my app sales, which always puts me in a bad mood. And I haven't figured out how to work out here yet, so I've missed my Friday morning workout as well. So grumpy. Although I feel good now, actually. Now that I'm set up on the laptop, I've got the microphone figured out. We're recording this, so I sort of feel like I'm back in control of something. Also, like this Dungood project is. I'm definitely homing in on a nice UX for it, but just one of the sort of structures that I implemented for it that has been confusing from the start. I finally worked out what I should just call it. Oh, you've got lists. Here's 4 lists, and if you you get 1 list, and then if you pay, then you get 3, and then if you pay, right. And but I didn't, because I had them called task types within projects, but then there's one project that's general, which has the ones before you. So, and then I should just call these lists and have a flat list, and then it will be all much less confusing. But it just means it's like, I just want to get this thing out, but now I've got to pull loads of guts out, even though I'd already done a load of fixing minor things, like, oh, this doesn't quite reload right, this doesn't quite lay out right, those things. So I'm just worried that I'm going to lose another 3 bloody weeks to just pulling out some guts, then having to go over those sort of minor fixes again. And I still haven't written my 12-month report, which is going to have to be a bloody 18-month report at this rate, which is to sort of promote, to sort of talk about what I've been doing, but also it sort of will promote the thing that I've just finished building. So that's behind the scenes. But I'm happy. It's exciting to be somewhere else.
I can
for
imagine.
the first time in a very long time, I have to say. And we've got the balcony here, so it's just you sit outside on the balcony and look out and eat some breakfast and have a coffee, and just like lots of little nooks and crannies in this apartment, and balconies all round, and like you can sort of and then new places to have an explore and look around and go for a run, hopefully. And so yeah, it's nice, but it's like, oh, my routine has been disrupted, kind of like spectrum-y nature, I think is... I think like I don't like my routine being disrupted, because it's like it makes me grumpy when I've got to like figure out how I'm going to program in a new gym profile into my exercise app. Anyway, so that's how I am. I'm well, thanks. So let's talk about potential. So you talked about like, you know, what did you want to be when you grew up kind of thing, not knowing when you were younger. Like when I was young, and I've said this, like I always had this, I thought, right, I'll be a rock star. Well, no, I'll be part of a hugely successful band. Then I will have a successful solo career of that, and then with the millions of pounds I make off that, I will create a nanotechnology enterprise. I'm trying to think of the good a nanotechnology powerhouse company that will solve death. Okay, right, so we'll just stop people from dying, and I'll live forever that way, so that I don't have to worry about because I this was around about the time that I was like, okay, I guess Christianity, this whole heaven thing, this whole soul that leaves your body and flies up into heaven thing, I'm starting to think it might not be. Let's have a look at it properly and go, has anyone really focused any effort on describing what this heaven looks like for a start? Yeah. I am not sure that much thought has been given to it, and it doesn't sound that great. Meanwhile, if computers are supposed to reach the processing capacity of the human brain in 20 years, this was more than 20 years ago, because it's one of these things that was always 20 years ago, we'll kind of know pretty soon if a computer can be conscious that then there's no like magic ghost inside you that can fly off into space. So anyway, so I was dealing with that. So I needed like some way to live forever that was more viable than the Christian way. Right. So then that was always my potential. So I'm going to be massively successful and solve death. That's what I wanted to do, and I thought that was within my potential when I was young. What's wrong with me? And then, like, life has been a process of accepting limitations ever since. But I still have this thing that, like, I don't want to waste the potential that I do still have.
See, I never had that story in my head, anything like that. And I'm beginning to wonder if it's just a lack of imagination. Just out of curiosity, like, is it just that, or is there a just? I was curious about lots of things, which is another thing that, I wanted to, ultimately, I was in, what I had wanted to study was something like maths and philosophy, because really I was just kind of interested in all sorts of things, and there was no one particular thing that, and maybe it's that it didn't capture my imagination. Solving death obviously did capture maybe this is an argument for giving people a religious education and a computer at the same time, as well as helping them learn how to play an instrument. I don't know. I didn't have the so I wonder, so that's one thing, like, in order to have to think about for people who achieve their potential. And also there's something negative about this idea of fulfilling your potential, because it also presents the idea that there is a battery that can be emptied or can be used up. And I don't think that's true.
Yes, life is not a beginning and an end. It's just it's a set of habits that you go through, and a set of things that you do over and over again. And you don't get born with
like the IQ thing has been like shot down.
Yeah.
So it's like so there's this whole
understanding the nature of privilege and understanding that we're really a function of our environment and what we're given in life to start with, that was always like a sticking point. I was like, how is that person able to be an artist? Why can't and I can? And like always having this problem, which was like, I don't understand how I could ever do that. And then finally realizing it's about privilege. It's about having some money from your family, or about being in a position where someone's promoting. Like it's something that not everyone gets to do.
But I think I agree. But I think it starts earlier as well. Like just looking at, I distinctly remember that there's a little group of mums that we went to our equivalent NCT, and we had a WhatsApp group, and it still exists, but nobody posts to it anymore. And there was a period when the kids start doing stuff. And depending on what the parent, like I think I've told this story. The daughter of the artist, age 2, the daughter of the artist, age 2, drew something that was recognisably a human form, where my daughter was still, scribbling, because I did not do drawing with her. I did reading with her. You know what I mean? It's like
she was doing scribble writing, and they were doing scribble painting. And it's like,
like it depends what you're exposed to. So the privilege as well is in the things you're exposed to, kind of matching your curiosity as well and interest.
Yeah, so I was exposed to a computer, and so that was the thing that I got interested in. But then I look at my siblings, and I see sort of varying levels of interest in the computer. But then I have to also factor in that I was the eldest, so I got first dibs on the computer. So it's like it's a whole It's complicated.
So I think that's part of my. And weirdly, on this subject, this week I was in a kickoff for a project, and they used a quote, a Maya Angelou quote, which is like, living a life is like constructing a building. If you start wrong, you'll end wrong. And I disagree profoundly. Maya Angelou does some interesting things, but I was like, what? You're totally like, it's like, if I set down, I'm not sure what she meant and whether it's taken out of context, but that is
how many amazing things have come out of trauma? Like how many, if you've had trauma, you're kind of looking at the world in with a different set of eyes to the people that haven't, and that kind of gives you a different perspective. Like my trauma led me to be fixated on this idea of death and like what was going to happen at the end, because I was like counting down to it. I was waiting for it. It's like, my mummy's there. Like I just need to get there. Like which that's not a normal 6-year-old like focus.
No. Well, it's not. It's not I don't know, normal. Let's take the normal out. But, that's not a focus generally available to a 6-year-old, thankfully. It's like,
thankfully. What I wanted to say was like that there's this thing where people that do achieve, kind of that do peak, when you do like kind of feel like you have achieved your potential, that can be a very sort of suicidal trigger. That can be a sort of like, that's when a lot of people have the hardest time. Like any famous person, any successful person, you read about, they talk about that moment where they'd achieved the sort of like peak of their success. They were always absolutely like miserable at that time, I think, like especially, well, if success in capitalist terms, certainly, right, I've made all this money, I'm the most famous person in the world, and I can't ever do anything better than this, and I feel absolutely terrible. That's how I tie it into the capitalism thing and the hierarchy of needs thing. Like,
and I think there's like I distinctly remember, on a different scale of not being famous and having loads of money, I just remember at one point in my life where I think I just had a promotion or had a particular job, and that was kind of the limits of my imagination at that moment. And I remember being on an aeroplane and there being turbulence, and actually feeling in that moment like, do you know what? I don't feel like at the moment, I don't feel like I haven't done anything. Like there's something left to do. I had this moment, and I do think you have these moments of like striving, achieving, then finding a new focus, and then another, and then another. And I think that said, don't think I don't sit there and I look at some people's job titles and go, how come they're one of those and I'm not? What have I done wrong? Why aren't I supreme advisor to the universe?
You don't want to be. Don't go into that American job title rabbit hole, though. It's like, here, have a job title as senior vice president, director of senior vice director of senior emperor.
I think I'd be a great supreme advisor to the universe, though. So, maybe that is my next aim.
I mean, you can just give yourself that job title.
I could actually. I'm going to change my Twitter bio today. Supreme advisor to the universe. Do as I say. I had misremembered who quoted this, and I don't know who the person is. Her name is Marianne Williamson, and I'm sorry, Marianne Williamson, but I've never heard of her. Except your quote, which says, our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It's our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us. We ask ourselves, who am I to be brilliant, gorgeous, talented, fabulous? Actually, who are you not to be? You are a child of God. Your playing small does not serve the world. There is nothing enlightened about shrinking so that other people won't feel insecure around you. We are all meant to shine as children do. Which I think is a different sort of pressure, but also true. I remember having a chat with, the quote does go on, but I don't want to make it into a quotey story. Okay. I'll link to the quote. But, like there is this other thing of like, I can't really, showing people what you think or what you know, or let me help you, is something you then have to apologise for. I'm not even, my siblings take the mickey out of me. I remember, but in a loving, but why don't you off sort of a way, where like, I remember, we do something together and they're trying to put a shelf in somewhere, and because I've got, I think, whatever it is, the engineering bit or whatever, I can go, have you thought about doing it this way? And then, it slots in where they weren't able to do it or something. I always get the, and then my, but that's the sort of the sibling version. But then in a meeting version or in a work context where you go, it depends how comfortable people are with you. Because if they're a team you're comfortable with, and then one of you does the thing that you're really good at, everyone goes, and that's why you get paid the big bucks, or whatever it might be. You know what I mean? Like, and we kind of teasingly, gently, friendlily acknowledge each other's, because we all have some brilliance of some description. But if it's a new gang of people, do you walk in and go, I'm terribly sorry, but I can see something that you all can't, and that's why I'm here, but I'm going to apologise for pointing out the thing that is my special skill that you've bought. And that sort of, you
paid. It's human psychology is such that you can't just give it to them straight away. Like, I've walked into those rooms, like some project room, and you see someone spending a lot of effort doing something that, there's a thing for that.
Or whatever it might be.
Like everything you're doing there, like, just use this over here, and but it's a bit like, because it is like, even if you do it yourself, like if you've been working on something, then you'd go, you Google it and you're like, there's a thing for this. Why did I spend all this time? Yeah, I learned a lot. It's fun. I learned a lot. I know how it works inside that. Like, and, I mean, I'm certainly not someone that is particularly good at sort of sparing people's feelings. I don't know that that's true. I have this idea that I'm not good at sparing people's feelings, but I think I'm pretty careful when I go into a situation. I don't think I'm like bull in a china shop.
But then, sometimes what are we all waiting for? What's wrong with being a bull in? This is. I saw somebody again in a work context today. He wrote a brilliant email. That his job is words. So so obviously that is his super strength. But he sent this email and it just sort of said in very gentle English, why don't you do it like this? I've written, here it is, do it like this. And he used nice words about I've been banging this in my head, and he said, and I complimented him. I went on Slack and I was like, I really the tone of your email was lovely. I wish I was better at writing things like that. Was basically what I was saying. But nice work. And he said he was trying to mimic that sort of walking up to someone's desk and going, have you thought about doing it like this? Mm-hmm. and I think it's that there is something about asking for permission or being granted permission to live up to your potential. And I think that comes in all forms to colleagues, especially management down. If you're managing somebody, really your main role is to help them do the thing that they're really good at.
Yeah, and then the flip side, there's this other side of sometimes the most frustrating thing is like if you feel like the people are limiting your potential by kind of not holding up their end, you can find that like other people like and it's this endless problem that I have, which is I sort of feel like my potential is being limited by the other people around me, but then there really is only so much. Like what you can do on your own is so much less than what you can do as part of a group of people. Without doubt. So by working alone on something, am I just wasting a lot of potential because I'm trying to do a lot of stuff that if I was working with someone else that we would, I think you can force and that's the problem with it, because a good team, a good collaboration is a force multiplier. It's like it's not just 1 + 1, it's like 2 times 2. So that's 2 bad examples, but it's 2 times 2 is the same as 2 + 2.
Didn't you say 1 + 1?
Well, 1 + 1, and then 1 times 1 is even worse because it's just 1. Anyway. Maths digression,
I'm not sure we needed the illustration.
Exactly. But then the wrong people, it just feels like it's just taking away too much. But there's that.
Yeah, that is but
if you can unlock other people's potential somehow, then
that's where the gold is. But I was I think the worst work example of this is where somebody sets you an objective but also tells you how they want you to get there. That to me is like the worst. That is the most the baddest the baddest brief is I'd like you to walk from here to here in 3 minutes and I want you to take this route. It's like, so I think that's a bit of a that's kind of a worst potential limiter to my mind.
So let's just talk about creating and spending potential, if that makes any sense. I kind of feel like it makes some sort of sense. So creating potential you do through practice, education, experience of whatever sort, but But also I think there's an idea that there's like an innate potential. But really we kind of have to say like there is, so conservative values are work is the only thing that is relevant when thinking about someone's potential. How hard they work is the only factor. But what we more enlightened people understand is that this work never exists in a vacuum. And while some people have managed to overcome unfathomable odds to become educated and break out of their sort of the place that they started, most people, for good reason, and then there's some things that you just can't change without a lot of surgery and like a real strong will. Like if people are looking at you as someone to be condescended to and patronized and like kind of like underestimated, that then, you know, short of like growing, sort of having some sort of beard implant, I'm not sure what you're supposed to do.
No.
So there's the sort of potential that is given to you that that conservative values definitely underestimates, and then there's the potential that you create through work. But I think even if you have been given a lot, you still feel most satisfied with the potential that you've created through your own effort. It's, you know, I mean, depending on who you are, I suppose.
But that's the satisfying. I did it. It's like my kids. I can do it myself,
and I achieved the thing I pictured.
Yeah.
But then in terms of like, how do you spend this potential? Like, kind of problem I have is I've always had is like, I have created this new process and here is an example of its use. I've done all this work and I've made this piece of music, or I've made this little video with it. And then I want people to look at that video and go, see the potential of it the way I see the potential of it. But they just see the thing. And the problem is most of the time that thing that you've made that uses some new clever process that you've created could be made some other way, and also it doesn't look as good as the things that are made those other ways. And it only really makes sense if you start, you know, using the tools, spending the potential. Or is it spending potential, or is it just like following through on
when you started talking about tools, one of the things that sprung to mind was learning a foreign language. So you can learn the foreign language, you can learn a language. What are you going to do? Why have you learnt it just for the process of learning it? What has happened to your brain in the process of learning it? Are you going to move to that country? Are you going to start writing books in that language? Are you going to make friends with people in that language? You know, one would be, I think, the way you're thinking about potential and the relationship between your potential and your tools is, I've learnt a language and now I'm moving to China and I'm going to start up a business in China. I'm going to translate all my apps into Chinese, whatever. Whereas actually when you learn a language, you do learn a new way of thinking, or a different way of thinking to how you... So the actual act of learning a language is just nice.
Also, it sort of helps you understand sort of human nature, like what's universal about human nature in a way as well, when you see what the similarities and the ways people from different countries
and the way they've and it helps you understand. I think it's a brilliant illustration of how circumstance shapes who we are. Like, I had this fascinating conversation in the week because I'm doing a project with Wales, the country. And I was telling somebody else that I need to practice saying the names of the towns that we're working with. And he mentioned that apparently the Welsh accent developed so that you could, you know, shout at each other across the valleys, and and then, which reminded me of a particular Balkan folk music sound, which sounds awful. It's mostly from Herzegovina, so I feel I can say this, but I'll include a link. But you know that there are many the text of some of the original music, which is kind of designed to carry, sounds awful, so most people tune out, were designed to send messages again across the hills to warn of impending arrival of the Ottoman occupiers. So it's like, the Turks will be there in a minute, you better run and hide, but in a shouty, horrible way. But when you start learning languages in different cultures, it's just that it's like this cut. I've read this has developed because of the circumstances. The Welsh accent, I don't know if this is true or not, it's unverified fact, but I like the story. But, like that the accent has developed so that it can carry a distance in a place that people live remotely and there are hills, sounds entirely plausible and is a literal illustration of what happens based on where you are, how things develop. So so going back to your tools point, what's the difference between potential and an aim or an objective? Like your story about your nano
solve death,
your solve death objective.
A big one.
It is a big one.
Well, I think if you look at it, the sort of Steve Jobs quote, like, you can only connect the dots in hindsight. So if you can be interested in all these different things, but it's only after they all come together. Like, he's interested in like typography and computing and operating system and all these things, and it's only like later down the line that he realizes that all of these things have fed into this one creation. And that's always how I feel. Like, I can't see the dots now. I enjoy learning stuff. I enjoy building tools. But my assumption, my belief is that I will look back over this and go, that's why I did that. Right, I knew that I was interested in that for a reason, but we can't always access why. No. But I certainly very much enjoy sort of expanding my capabilities and building that potential and just learning new things and creating new things. Okay. But like, in terms of what that goal is, I still feel like everything I'm doing, I'm working on. Like, my mood tracking tool is monitoring whether what I'm doing is making me happy and successful in terms of making my life better. I'm making a task tracking tool, which is for making sure that my time is well organized so that the things I optimize. It's like, but what am I actually making? What am I actually doing? Because all of these things, like, yes, hopefully I can make some money by creating tools that other people can use, but like, what is the thing that I actually create at the end of the day? What is your
goal? Life?
Yes,
but you're just living your life, making things, aren't you? What's wrong with that? I mean, and I think if you continue to develop and work on yourself, as I think many of us constantly are looking at things, we will never fulfill our potential because our potential is always changing.
If you keep growing your potential, how could you ever reach your potential? So the one guaranteed way to fulfill your potential is to limit your potential.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I think that's a very unexpected and sudden brilliant conclusion, and I'm sort of depressed now. So what you're saying is every time I decide, right, I'm going to learn, because I just finished my Japanese, my 90 days Japanese. I've done Chinese. I'm back in Italy now, so I should have probably just... My Italian's okay, but I'm still like sometimes I phase out when everyone's having a conversation and I'm really not sure what they're on about anymore. And also in the shower, I'm like, I still don't know what any of these words mean on the shampoo bottles. I think sapone is soap, but beyond that, like...
sounds possible or probable that it is soap.
Like, which of these is for face? Which of these is shampoo even? Like, which of these is what? Like, so, but yeah, like that idea that the more you kind of... the more it's like you're just opening up but it's that specialist versus generalist thing, like that if you sort of generalize and learn more things, then you sort of hope that you'll tie them up into some brilliant thing at some point in the future. But yeah, it's like if you could just like that Japanese, I don't know what it's called, but there's that Japanese thing of being a craftsman and being brilliant at one thing, and that's really looked on well in society. But I feel like our society doesn't necessarily value someone that's brilliant at one thing in the same way that some other cultures do. I think
I think that's true of Western, well, I think particularly British culture. Like, the engineer is not revered in England.
The engineer is not revered, yet for some reason we give the most reward to the people that have been promoted out of what they're effective at, just beyond what they're effective, what they're good
in
at.
Fact,
So you turn everyone into sort of these kind of fairly useless people.
We definitely, there is something peculiar, I'd say. I had said Western, and then I was going through, in Germany, your hair doctor or hair engineer or Frau engineer, Frau doctor, like they add your profession into the way you're addressed. So they obviously do revere that kind of expertise. And there's many cultures, but Brits don't, and I don't particularly know why. And I don't know what effect
my
grandfather.
I know that my granddad on my mum's side was, like that you want, he wants his daughter to marry a doctor, a lawyer, an architect is good, but there are those sort of like that small number of professions that is kind of looked on with respect, but the world's not like that anymore, really.
No.
I mean, yes, you could be a lawyer, yes, you can be a doctor. Maybe we should just all be lawyers and doctors, and then we would feel.
I think we should all be scientists, but no, I don't know. No, you just need all of it. I think. You do, I'm a bit more. I think we're potentially going off topic, but there's STEAM versus STEM. This like, do you know this?
Is it got arts in there?
It's got an art in there,
right,
and I think that's much more appropriate to humans. Like I think the art element, and I think that's one of the things, or I suspect, or whatever the word is, that one of the things that helps you be brilliant at technology is your artistic endeavours, or are your own art. The fact that you do music and you do drawing and you can do graphics and you can do all these things I think they just help your brain work more. I think
so. Like, I think you sort of balance out, feed in, and that's the other reason to keep kind of learning new things, is because it does like give you a different perspective on the things you do already know. Even like the process of learning a language, I'll be like confused, but then as I learn more vocabulary, it'll sort of contextualize some other stuff, and I'll be like, right, so it's that, and you'll start to spot patterns. So the more you learn, the more kind of potential patterns you can spot, and the more you might just come up with something brilliant. But it's you've got to execute on that, and I think. But you're right, like if you're worried about achieving your potential, then
I think it's the worry about achieving your potential. I do still think, of course, it's there for all of us. Like, are we living? But maybe it's you could couch it in different terms. Like, am I living my best life? Am I making the right decisions for my life? Am I, am I? And I think about it as well in terms of your, one's physical body. Which does change, and what you can do and what you can achieve with it. Like, you just become, it changes, and I'm not even going to say it deteriorates. I'm going to say it changes, and it's like what was possible at one point will not be possible, but something else might be. Your patience might have increased, your attention to technique might have increased and changed, or whatever it might be, that actually as your body ages, you can become good at things that you weren't really good at when you were younger, because you didn't have the patience to learn them, because you couldn't be bothered, because you didn't need to, because nothing hurt. It's like, do you know what I mean? So it's like when go back to the scenario of the job title or the role or whatever it is that someone else has, and you go, why haven't I got that, or whatever. I think those moments for me personally make me go, oh, is that I sort of measure up, is that the life? Would I like that? Would I put the effort in to do that? No. Or even you go to someone's house that you think is beautiful, and you go, yeah, but it costs that much money. Am I willing to invest the effort that's going to be required to have that house? No. Perhaps also we should consider potential not as being tall or deep, but wide.
Yes. And that was something else.
I think we always go, it's like who's got the most money, who's got the biggest job title, who's got the most qualifications, but how about the person who's had the richest life, or the most varied, and has gone from a childhood in this format, and then they've done all these things and been up and down and round and round, and then got to this end. I mean,
to climb to the highest tower requires a very narrow focus. And it's intrinsic. The sort of great cellist has done nothing but practice cello their entire life, so they've led the antithesis of a rich existence. Like, people that we sort of hold up in society as the most successful tend to have not had a very rich life, and that doesn't lead to happiness, I don't think. And actually, like, we should enjoy the fact that we're able to create this richness, and a well-lived life, I think has lots of things in it.
I mean, I think if you are a cellist, full power to you. If you're happy, great. But I think, and But I think there's this other format, and I think that whole striving for the tall, narrow peaks is actually what's not helping us. As a
there
world.
can only be a few of them by definition.
It's
like if everyone was at the peak, then there wouldn't be any peak. Like it's the peak just has to keep getting taller if we're just all pushing for the peaks. Whereas
isn't it?
Let's flesh out the bottom instead. Like we can see the massive inequality that mindset has led to. But if we could change our mindset and think about, let's flesh out.
Let's go wide.
Kind of lower level.
Let's go wide.
Let's go wide.
I want to go wide.
There we go.
There you go. We want wide.
Let's go wide.
Let's go wide.
Hashtag go wide. Thanks for listening. If you like the podcast, go to grandpodcast.com. Where can people find you on the internet, Ivanka?
People can find me at Ivanka on Twitter.
Oh, like it says underneath though on the video. What, aren't you watching this on the video? You can find me...
Like and subscribe.
Subscribe. You can find me at Michael Forrest. We've got... subscribe on grandpodcast.com. We've got a Patreon, patreon.com/grandpodcast. And, that's all. You can get my stuff, goodtohear.co.uk. And that's...
that'll do us.
That'll probably do us. Get Ivanka's stuff at restaurantsbrighton.co.uk or whatever. Or whatever. Or the wellbeing thing. I'll put the links in.
Yeah. Yes.
brightonnaturalhealthcentre.org.uk.
Thank you, Michael.
That's okay. I've typed it a few times recently, so I'm starting to remember it. Okay, well, thanks for listening. We'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye. Bye, bye, bye.